What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. So today I'm going to talk all about Serato settings, how I set mine, what every setting means, and some good recommendations on how you should set yours. Pumped up, people, because this video is going to answer any question you've ever had about Serato settings. I'm literally going over every single detail, but do me a huge favor so everyone can see this and get their settings right. Hit the like button down there. It's going to help my algorithm so it pops up on more people's feeds and all that good stuff. And if you're new here, subscribe. It's worth it. I got a ton of videos on the way and a ton of videos already recorded, so check them out. But anyway, let's dive right into this, shall we? So I'm going to open up settings in Serato by clicking the settings little gear icon in the top right hand corner. And we're going to start right here from the top in DJ preferences. So you got control preferences, playback keys, use shift. I had this clicked down and I highly recommend you have this selected as well. So essentially it makes it where any playback key, any quick key on your keyboard that would control a song that's in a playing deck, it requires you to have to use shift before that playback key, that quick key would work. Right, so play, stop, a cue point, right? You would have to use a shift to use a cue point on like the number keys, loading decks, anything, put it in reverse, which is a common mess up, right? Anything that's gonna mess up, what song's playing out loud and totally clear your dance floor, you have to use shift first. You would have to really mess up to hit shift and A and put everything in reverse or something like that. It's gonna prevent all that bullshit. So, lock playing deck. This locks the deck that's playing so you can't load a song over top of a song that's already playing and totally clear your dance floor. Another insurance policy. Now, I have it turned off for me. The only reason is because the way I work, my workflow, when I'm DJing, I always load songs on that are playing. I use turntables, so the turntables are kind of always spinning. So my music's always kind of playing. I don't hit start and stop. So, whenever that's on, it kind of messes me up because I gotta stop the song, then load it. You know what I mean? So I had that turned off, but depending on your playing style, you might want that on. That's an extra layer of security to make sure you don't mess up people's two steps on the dance floor. You know what I'm talking about? Sort cues and loops chronologically. So as it says, right? So all your saved loops, all your cue points will automatically go in chronological order based on the song. So if you have all these cue points all over the song, it's gonna put it in order of how it appears in the song. I have that turned off because there's certain routines that I do with tone plays and stuff where it's easier for me to have all the certain tones in a row, and it's not chronological order, it's the order of the tone play. So it makes it easier for the tone play for me. But if you don't do stuff like that, if it makes it easier for you, click it on, and it really helps with the workflow and organization and making sure that the first beat is always on the first cue. Because honestly, I run into that problem every once in a while because I'll set things up for other things and then I go to play the song regularly and then my cue point is out of whack. I hit the first cue point thinking it's gonna be the first cue point and it's not, and then I bomb a mix. So it definitely does mess me up having it on, every once in a while. So if you're not doing tone plays or things like that, maybe click it on. It's probably a useful tool for sure. Enable hot cues essentially just allows you to cue up things on the pads or on the numbers. So if you turn it off, you just can't have cues. I don't know why there's even an option to turn it off. I guess for the purists. I guess years and years ago, cues were looked upon as cheating because you could never cue it. You would just tape a record back in the day. So maybe that's an evolved thing. I don't know. But yeah, so if you're a purist, you can turn it off, but turn it on. You need the hot cues, trust me. Track end warning gives you a warning. 20 seconds left on the track. Oh shit, put on another song. I have it on because, sometimes it flashes and reminds me if I get distracted or whatever. It's good to have, but just keep in mind it doesn't work if your track is under a minute. So it's not going to work at all for any tracks that are under 60 seconds long. Disable needle search during playback. Another little insurance. I highly recommend you turn it on. If you have a controller that has the needle search feature, I know Pioneer has it and stuff, the SX, the SZ, they all have it, where you can search to a song. This disables it while the song's playing. So if you have a song playing on a deck, you can't search through it, which really helps out because God forbid you hit the search thing, while you're playing, you're gonna mess everybody's two-step, right? It's just another little insurance policy built into Serato to make sure you don't mess up the song that's playing out loud to the crowd. Show beat jump controls. This is a super, super, super cool feature. So I'm gonna show you this now real quick. So when I cue songs up, right? I cue it like this, and I did a whole video on this, by the way, too, so if you want to know more detail, it's kind of right up here. I usually cue it at the first beat, obviously, then halfway through the intro, right, which is usually four bars, you know what I mean, depending on the intro, but usually 4 bars, and then the start of the song. That way I have, you know, halfway through in case I missed my cue at the beginning of the chorus, and then the start of the song in case I completely butchered the mix, or maybe I just want to drop it on the one depending on the song, right? That's generally what I do with my cue points. Now, obviously, if there's other songs and, you know, there's a million different ways to do it. I do it different for a lot of different songs, but that's my general rule, right? Well, instead of having to listen to the song and count 4 beats, Beat Jump will jump the beats for you. So you have your beat jump controls right under here, right? And you could set it to 1, 2, 4, or 8 beats. Now, I'm pretty sure 8 beats is like a 4 beat, of 4 bars, right? So it's actually 2 bars. So yes, I'm stupid as hell because it's 8 beats because 4 beats per bar. Wow, that's how stupid I am. Anyway, so if you want to jump a quick, you would go to 16 because there's 16 beats in 4 bars, 4 beats per bar. So if you start at the beginning and then you just want to have that halfway point queued up for your intro, bam, set it to 16, jump it, boop, and then drop your cue point, bloop. And that should be right on the thing, right? So that should start right at where you need to be, so first, second. And then to have your next one, you just jump again, bloop. And then that's the start of the song. And then you have a cue point for the start of the song. So it does this by analyzing your tracks ahead of time. A couple settings we're gonna talk about requires that. Essentially what you wanna do is you wanna drag any crate that has 100% music in it, right? Not like a master crate, but like, you know, one of the sub crates that just has music in it. Drag it over top the analyze files, and it's gonna analyze every file in there and create beat grids. So you're able to use features like this, right? So it's accurate. So Serato essentially analyzes every song so you can accurately use features like this, like beat grid. It knows, you know, how long the songs actually are, it counts the bars for you so you can jump and cue your stuff up a lot faster. So yes, definitely enable beat jump controls. Super important. Now your quantized value is how detailed Serato is going to be when it scans and analyzes your files. So if you want Serato just to pick up every beat, right? So there's 4 beats in measure, like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or if you want them to get like half beats, you could switch it to half beat, you know, quarter beat, 8th, 16th beat. I don't know what the hell you're doing with that. I just set it at 1 beat because it just makes sense. Everything just makes sense. Everything just, it's a clap of the hands, people. I like everything to be nice and simple, clap of the hands. I recommend the same for you unless you're doing some crazy shit. Just keep it to 1 beat and keep it simple. And that's the default setting as well. So now let's look at auto gain. This is a very, very important feature that I highly recommend you turn on. So when you play different tracks might sound louder than others. Some tracks that are older were recorded shitty and never remastered and they sound lower, or you know what I mean? Some tracks were like mastered terribly and they're super loud and will blow out your speakers and everything in between, right? All music is recorded differently, so music sounds differently, generally speaking. Auto gain fixes that. It essentially analyzes the song and it's able to like bring the song up or down depending on the track or whatever. That way when you're mixing, everything sounds pretty level. It's not a perfect technology. The perfect technology for this doesn't exist, but it does a pretty damn good job, you know, so you can really worry about the mix and you don't have to like, you know, drastically adjust your gains every time when you're switching from track to track. The only way this works though is you have to analyze all your files, because when Serato analyzes your files, it doesn't just do it for the beat grid, it also analyzes the quality and the peaks and the dives and all that stuff to make sure they can, you know, auto gain it correctly. So analyze your entire library at some point, that way you can utilize all these features correctly. Now the reason why someone might want to adjust their breaking settings is if they want to get a more vinyl feel, right? So instead of just stopping the song clean, it's like ooh, right? And it does like a more vinyl stop where it sounds like vinyl. Same thing if you slow down the stopping, when you press pause or stop the song, instead of just stopping abruptly, it'll slowly. So these settings exist just to mimic vinyl if you want to have those cool kind of sound effects. Depending on what hardware you're using, you're either going to set these settings in Serato right here under control preferences, or actually on your hardware, on your turntables or certain mixers. I think like the SZ and the 1000 controllers have it right on the hardware where you can adjust that right there. So depending on what you're using, you either do it on Serato or on your hardware. So let's get into on song load. So the first setting is play from start. If you have that selected, when you load a song up, it's going to play from the beginning of the track. If you don't have that selected, Serato will essentially just play the song wherever the other song's at. So if your song that you're currently playing on deck A is at, you know, 2 minutes into the song, then on deck B, when you load that next track, it's gonna play that track at 2 minutes into the song too. I don't know why. I think it's like has to do with like just needle placement and kind of like to make it more natural for like vinyl users switching to Serato, I think, because it doesn't really make sense now in like the current state of technology. But yeah, so definitely click that on. Instant doubles is essentially when you have one song playing on deck A and you load that same song on deck B, it is going to play the song on deck B exactly where the deck A song is. So they're gonna match each other. If it's the same song, they're gonna match each other and be playing at the same point. And they'll stay together perfectly in sync as long as both BPMs are matched. Now that's a cool benefit if you want to like double up, right? If you want to do cool tricks, you kind of load it the other side and then just move it up a hair, you know, and do the bop 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 with a crossfader. If you've ever seen DJs do that, right? And it's also a clutch thing to have if you're just mixing with one turntable or one CDJ, because then you just load the song on the other side. It matches right where you're playing, so you can switch it over to that side. The song's still playing, and then you can like use your dominant hand to scratch or do whatever you want on the one side that you're playing. So if you got one turntable, one CDJ, you're just playing one-sided, instant doubles is the move, but you probably already know that. Now, play from first cue point means what it says. When you load a song, it's gonna play from the first cue point. Now, if you have this selected, it's gonna basically disable the play from start. So instead of having it play from start, then it's just gonna go from the first cue point instead. Why do I have both selected, you might ask? It's because that if there's not a cue point on a song I load, it'll still load from the beginning, right? So there's no cue points in the song at all, then the play from first cue point is basically turned off, right? Because there's no cue points. So then it'll revert back to the play from start. So no matter what, when I load a track, it's always gonna play from start if I have those two options selected. So I highly recommend that. Turn off FX is another insurance little policy built into Serato that like if you have an effect that's still turned on one deck and you load a track, it's gonna automatically turn that effect off. Now this only works with Serato effects, and I know for a fact like it could definitely mess you up if you use like the echo out feature. The echo out feature in Serato will echo your song out and fade it out at the same time, and then now no music can go through that deck while that effect is on. And when I would be like DJing with a controller and I'm using that echo out effect, a lot of times I would leave that effect on and then load a track and then switch the track and nothing's playing. I'm like, what's going on, what's going on? Oh, and then you have to turn the effect off, you know, and then your song starts playing again. So this essentially prevents all that, prevents any like, you know, unwanted effects to be on the deck when you load a brand new song. I got mine turned off. I mean, I think I'm gonna turn it on. I'm just gonna turn it on right now because I kind of should have that on for when I use controllers and stuff like that. It's just a good insurance policy. And honestly, you're never really gonna want an effect on your deck when you're loading a track anyway, so it's just a no-brainer. Turn that one on. Virtual deck speed, 33 or 45. This definitely has to do with if you're using turntables or in general, I don't know. I never tried like 45 mode on a controller. I don't know if that makes a difference, but you know, if you're using turntables, if you're using 33, you know, 12-inch, you know, vinyl, then you turn the 33 on. If you playing with 45s, turn the 45 on. That simple. Now let's talk about the recording section. So you have two different options when it comes to recording. You can choose your bit depth and you can choose the file format. Now when it comes to bit depth, you have 16 and 24. So 24 is used in studios, you know, when they actually record whatever they're recording, right? Because 24-bit is a way different, more complicated file to my knowledge where it's easier to master. So the only way I record in 24-bit and the only time I would recommend you to record something in 24-bit is if you plan on having this mastered. If you're making a mix and you're sending it to someone to master, if you're gonna master it yourself, or if you're, you know, making a little routine or a little edit, you know, just on Serato, you don't know how to use Ableton, but you wanna have somebody master it later, then record it in 24-bit because it's gonna be easier for them to master. But if you're not having it mastered, there's really no sound difference like that's gonna be noticeable. It's just gonna be a bigger file and harder on your computer. You might as well just record it in 16-bit and it's gonna sound fantastic and gonna be good to go. Now when it comes to file format, this is real simple. They're both the same thing. Wave and AIFF are the same thing. Wave is PC's file format for like recording, like good quality recording, and AIFF is Mac's file format for really good recording. So depending on what kind of computer you have, if you got a Mac, use AIFF. If you got a PC, use Wave. And that's it. Now sync mode. This is the one part that I don't know a whole ton about because I don't use sync. I'm open to using sync to like maybe match BPM so I don't have to like mess with the sliders on my turntables. That could make certain routines easier. I just don't have a hot cue on like my S9 like turned on for sync to use it. You know, so like it's hard for me to click it. So like, I don't know, until I get that, but I haven't done it. I don't know. I'm just not a sync guy. So I have everything turned off. But just so you know, if you have sync on and you utilize it, it'll sync the BPMs. It'll sync your tracks based on beat grids if you dropped it a little off. So it kind of helps you with mixing. I'm just a purist. I'm a firm believer in just practicing and getting your mixes you know, fluid and smooth without having to use any type of like artificial help. And you know, it's just not worth it. Learn the right way, and then once you learn it, you're not going to want to use this stuff because you know how to do it regularly, so it just doesn't make sense. So if I was you, turn it off and practice your face off. Now we go to our audio settings. So the first thing is you're gonna see deck setup. You could do a custom for whatever the hell you're doing. I never did a custom in my life though, so that's like a per occurrence situation, I guess. Turntables are CDJs, so my Serato's set up for DVS because I use DVS most of the time. So if I'm using needles, I turn on the turntable option. That's gonna read the phono port RCAs of the back of my S9 and make sure my turntables work. If I'm using phase without the needles, then I turn on CDJs. That's gonna use the CD line RCA outputs of my S9 to read like my tables, or obviously it's for CDJs as well. Now, if you don't have these options, it's probably because you're just using a controller and it's nice and easy. You don't have to worry about this. It's just gonna be plug and play and you're gonna be good to go. USB buffer size. So this has to do with the latency. So latency essentially is the response of the program based on what you're doing with the hardware. So the second you scratch that record or scratch that platter, does it scratch that second on the hardware, right? We're talking about milliseconds, you know? At 5, which is basically the standard, the default setting, I think it works great. They say to start at 5 and then mess around with it based on your computer. So if you go lower, if you go to like 2 or 1, then, you know, it's gonna be harder on your computer, but it's gonna be a tighter response. So it depends on how beefed up your computer is, you know? And then on the flip side, if you have a computer that's struggling with Serato a little bit, maybe you wanna raise this up to 10 or 20, and then it's gonna perform a little better for you because it's less harsh on the computer. So start at 5, adjust it based on your computer, what works best for you. Honestly, I just rock 5. Why mess with it? Why make it any harder on my computer? You know what I mean? I'm happy with the results, so if it's not broke, I'm not fixing it. Now, audio output is essentially where your audio is going, right? And it's pretty cool. This is a newer feature in Serato. You can use your laptop speakers to practice. So you can essentially hook your controller up to your laptop, bring up Serato, click on use laptop speakers right here, and then when you're DJing, all the music's gonna come out of the laptop speaker. So it's good for practicing just in a, you know, in your room or whatever, just chilling if you're just starting out. As far as make audio available to other applications, that's useful mainly for streaming. So if you're using the same computer to stream with and you wanna have the audio from your mix, right? Like if you're streaming a mix, you're DJing, you're live streaming, you wanna have that go directly to Twitch or wherever you're streaming from, then you can click this on and then install the I Show You audio capture in there. And when that's installed and that's all set up, then you essentially select I Show You or whatever it comes up as, like the audio. I think it comes up as like I Show You audio or whatever. You select that as your sound within your streaming software, and then now they're gonna hear direct like music from your DJ setup. So it allows you to basically stream live or, you know, send audio to wherever. You know, there's lots of things you could do with it, but the main thing really is streaming live. So if you're streaming the same computer, click that thing on, install the program, install the audio capture, and it really does work fantastic. As far as CD vinyl, there's a couple controls in here if you're using CDJs or vinyl. I have pretty much all of them turned off. I mean, anti-drift, I don't know, maybe I should turn that on. I just never use, it's just one of those things I never messed with it, so it's like, I don't wanna, you know what I mean? I like how everything is, so like I'm not gonna mess with it at all. You know, the needle dropping relative mode is goofy. It's like the hardest way to mix in the entire world, needle dropping and actually, it's like using real vinyl essentially. So when you have relative mode on with turntables, it's gonna essentially load the song on the entire vinyl. So like if you want to play the song halfway through, you got to drop the needle halfway through the vinyl, literally, and just like you were playing a real record. And it is just unbelievably hard and not something you want to do all the time unless you're like an absolute animal. Like you got to be an animal. Sticker lock's a cool feature because then it'll lock a cue point where you like your sticker to be. A sticker on a vinyl, right? Usually you'll see DJs with stickers that go across their vinyl like this, and DJs like to like scratch and mess around with vinyl based on the sticker position. A lot of DJs like it up and down, like at 12 o'clock. I personally like it at 9 o'clock. You know what I mean? But wherever your sticker is, if you have that selected on, the cue point will get locked to where your sticker is. So like, the cue points will always be at the same spot. Now let's go to library and display. So show iTunes libraries, it shows your library. If you keep all your music through iTunes, then you have to have that selected so you can see all your music. Little disclosure, iTunes is on its way out. I highly recommend you take all your music out of iTunes and put it on your internal music folder within your hard drive of your computer. If you want to learn how to do that, I did do a little video talking about where I keep my music and all that good stuff. I definitely highly recommend you do that. You literally just drag all the songs out of iTunes, make folders, you know what I mean, and just relocate stuff. It's going to be worth it in the long run. Do it in your off season because iTunes is on its way out, and I think these features may be slowly on their way out too. So, you've been warned. Protect library basically protects your library from being edited. So like the song titles, the artist titles, and it also protects your library from being songs being deleted and whatnot. I'm constantly deleting songs and deleting dupes in my library, so I have that turned off. If I work with people that are going to be on my laptop, you know what I mean? If you're like collabing with other DJs or whatever, you're doing sets with them, I maybe turn that on just in case they delete something or mess something up, because some DJs are spazzes and they're like trying to type in a song and they mess everything up, so maybe turn that on. It's another insurance policy from Serato. Custom crate columns is super clutch because it basically lets you set your entire Serato as one, as far as like where you put your BPM, your artist, your track, like all the different like sub titles or whatever of every track. So let me show you. So basically, when you go in, right, I like my BPM up front, my song, my artist, my length, my key, the plays, bit rate, and then the date added so I know how new it is and location, right? That's what I like. Well, if you have custom crate columns selected, then whatever you set for this crate, it'll work for every other crate. Every crate's gonna be exactly the same, exactly how you like it. If you don't have it selected, then every crate you go into, you have to reset with all that stuff. Now, some people maybe like certain crates just to have certain information, other crates not to have that information, but for me, I'd rather have my entire library the same, so I always have that selected. Center on selected song, I don't have that turned on because I don't know, it's just weird, but what this does is when you have it clicked on, you go into your library here, and then you essentially, whatever song you're selecting, it'll always go to the center. So I select one back here, and then it goes to the center. So when you collect here, it goes to the center. But the thing is, like when you select a song again, so you select one here, that doesn't go to the center. It's only the first song you click on when you go into a crate. So here, instrumentals crate. I'm gonna click on 99 Problems, it'll center that. But if I click on Player's Ball, it doesn't center that. You know what I mean? So like it's only the first one. I don't know, it's kind of weird. So it's not needed, so I just have it turned off. Include sub-crate tracks. That means when you have a group of crates like this, like my acapellas crate, right? And you click on the group of crates, it's gonna have everything in there. If it's turned off, it's not gonna show you everything that's in the sub-crate, so you just gotta go to each individual crate to see what's in there. Super clutch if you just wanna search all acapellas instead of just R&B acapellas, you know what I mean? So definitely turn this on, it's a no-brainer. I don't even know why you can turn it off. It should be on all the time. Play track color, once you play a track, it can go in blue, gray, or you can have it off completely, so it's just not on at all. Reset play tracks on exit. Every time you exit out of Serato, it's gonna make all the songs regular again, so they're not gonna be blue or gray anymore. I do that every time because I DJ off of crates, not off of blue tracks. Some DJs DJ off of blue tracks they've DJ'd with before, so it depends on your workflow, how you DJ. Me personally, I like it all reset. The blue tracks lets me know the day of that I already played it that day. And then reset it, and then it's a new slate every gig, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I've set it. But obviously set it with whatever works best for you. And then library text size, self-explanatory. If you're going blind, you can make the text huge. If you like it smaller, you want to see more on the screen, you can make it smaller. Show tempo, match, and display brings up this little screen right up top. And basically this little screen allows you to line up the beats so you can more easily mix. I personally watch the waveforms in the middle here if I want to have Serato face, and this one's just kind of distracting. I really don't like it, but some people, learn to mix with that and like it, so maybe turn it on if it works for you, but for me, I have that turned off. Now the high track AM mode is a famous setting. It was made for DJ AM. He's a legendary DJ. Now if you're a DJ and you haven't heard of him, he's my favorite DJ of all time. He literally laid the groundwork for everything we do now. Look him up and learn about him. Watch his documentary. It's amazing, amazing stuff. He's legend. Oh my God, I love that guy. He was the best. But back in the day, before Shazam and all that, you know what I mean? When computers came out, he hated that you could see what track you're playing because they used to basically cover up their records. When they played real vinyl, they would put stickers over the records so you couldn't see what they were playing. And DJs would always be looking, trying to find out well, what track is this? I want to get this vinyl, whatever. So when they moved the computers, they made this setting in there so he could still hide his tracks so you can't tell what remix he's playing and all that, so it keeps it secret. Nowadays you got Shazam and you know, there's really not a huge need for it, but they keep it in there as a legacy feature to kind of honor, you know, the late great DJ AM. But not for nothing, if you want to hide your tracks, you can do so, and nobody know what you're playing, you know, if they're not Shazamming or if it's a real deep shit, so you have that option too. EQ colored waveforms are super cool. Leave that on. Essentially, when you adjust your EQ, like I'm taking the bass out right here, taking the treble out here, you could see the waveforms basically changing. And that's super cool because having colored waveforms helps me identify snares and kicks and stuff when I'm like looking, when I'm like doing different things. It's also clutch if you happen to leave like an EQ off, right? Like I got my low end all the way off and I load a new track to that deck. Oh wow, there's no red in this waveform, so I now know that the low end is out, so I have to turn the low end back up before I play it out loud. So another little insurance policy that Serato has. Color key display displays your keys in color key display displays your keys. Color key display displays your keys color coded. That was tough to say. That took me like 9 times. Holy shit. But yeah, it makes everything color coded. We're gonna talk about literally next the Camelot wheel and all that. But being color coded, when colors are related, you know they mix with each other. So it's pretty cool, generally speaking. So there's a wheel of colors and a wheel of numbers and all that stuff, depending on what next setting you have. And having it color-coded allows you to more easily identify which tracks will go together based on their color. Now, show key as. So these are the keys of your song. You have a couple different options in Serato. So the Camelot system is based on the Camelot color wheel. It basically has a number coded, so the number is 1 through 12, and then it's A for major and B for minor. And, you know, looking at the wheel, you can kind of tell, you know, what songs go with what and whatnot. I'm gonna make a whole video on how to mix and key in a little bit, so if you have any questions about that, you know, we'll definitely go over that in another video. But, you know, essentially using that. Now, classical key is literally like some music theory shit, right? It's gonna show you the actual key, the actual scale that each song is in, G major, minor, fifth, or whatever. So if you are a classically trained musician and you're learning how to DJ, put on classical key and you're gonna recognize what song goes together real well. For all us regular folk, don't even touch it. It's super complicated. Now, open key is super similar to the Camelot wheel, except for D is major and M is minor. So it just does different letters and whatnot, and that's it. I mean, everything else is pretty much the same. Now, original tag is if you use an external program to scan your whole hard drive and to, like, you know, identify keys, or if you're switching from another DJ program and the other DJ program already identified all your keys and scanned all your shit for you, then you can go to original tag, and essentially it'll just use the original tags that are built into the metadata of all your songs. Deck BPM display, that's 1 decibel or 2 decibel, that's like at the end, so it's 128.4 BPM, 128.45 BPM, right? You know, how specific do you want your BPMs to be? Me personally, I just do 1 decibel, I keep it simple. Maximum updates per screen is how many times your screen updates per second. That's a setting that's defaulted at 60, and I wouldn't mess with it unless your computer is lagging and running slow. So if your computer's running slow, your computer's struggling with Serato, then maybe lower that down, and that'll help it run a little more smoother. Otherwise, leave that shit at 60. It's all good. And then the high-res screen display, they give you an option to turn it off because, again, if you don't have a high-res screen on your computer, or if your computer's struggling with it, you know what I mean, you could turn it off. It's a little less lag on your computer, but I love having the HD, you know, the 4K kind of screen. It looks way better. I'm so glad. When they added this like a year or two ago, I was like, thank God, finally, because it was the only blurry thing I was looking at. Like, everything else is high-res nowadays. Like, why wasn't this? Like, they were late for this one. So I'm glad it's here. Select it if your computer can handle it and you have the right screen. Send usage data to Serato. So Serato claims it doesn't affect your performance at all. I'm one of those people that I'd rather do less than more, you know? I don't know, it's just another thing that can mess up my shit somehow. I just have it turned off. I don't trust it. I don't do it. But if you want to do it and you help Serato out, you can do that too. But my bad, Serato. I just get nervous with these sort of things. And then show streaming service. So if you are hooked up to a streaming service, this is a new thing with Serato, and you want to stream your music live, you click this on, and then essentially you can select like Beatport, BeatSource, SoundCloud, or Tidal. So these are the 4 services. I use BeatSource. I absolutely love it. I have a video coming out soon that talks all about the features and how it works and everything. And I really think that live streaming music in general is going to be the future for us DJs, and I'm really, really pumped up about this technology. Like, I can't even tell you. So there's definitely a video coming soon about that, but if you're using a streaming service, this is how you turn it on right here. Now let's talk about your mixer settings. The first one is your output. Do you want stereo or mono? Now, Now, I use stereo. I like stereo the best. I think it's the way songs are meant to be heard, because especially if they're recorded in stereo, that's how, you know, whoever made the song, they wanted you to hear it that way, so I'd rather reproduce it the same way. But the only time I switch to mono is if I'm using one speaker. So if you're only hooked up to one speaker out of like your right or left, just one coming out of your mixer, then you want to switch to mono, because otherwise Serato's only going to play the right or left side depending on what wire you have hooked up. So if you play older Motown tracks that are super stereo, like an old Beatles track or something, you know, you're literally going to get all snare and backup vocals in one side, and it's going to sound like shit, you know. So if you're using one speaker, definitely switch to mono, but generally speaking, if you're using a two speaker left and right setup, leave it at stereo, it'll sound better. Monitoring, this is where your monitor settings are. This can be controlled in the hardware like this, or directly on your mixer or your hardware. For me, I use an S9, and these settings are right on the S9, so I adjust them on the S9. This basically, you know, how you want your music to be monitored in the headphones. Some people like to have a mix in the headphones, so they'll mix with their headphones on the entire time. They're not listening to the music on the outside, just on the inside, and then that's how they mix, so they're hearing both tracks and everything. Others like to set it where you're only hearing the track you're queuing up. Maybe you just want to listen to the track real quick and then you mix out loud. That's how I am. I really don't mix my headphones at all. The only reason why I use headphones is just to listen to the track. Like, all right, what's this cue again? Oh yeah, how's it start again? Oh yeah. Maybe play it and hear how it mixes real quick, but that's about it. And then like I'm playing it out loud. I listen out loud. I set up my speakers behind me at events because like I want to hear how loud it is. I want to be able to monitor it. You know, I'm weird like that. You know, I'm really funny about like not being too loud or soft or whatever. And don't worry, I'm gonna go completely deaf because of it, but I don't know, that's just my style. Now your up fader and cross fader curves, again, that's another setting that can be adjusted on your hardware if your hardware has that option. Otherwise, you do it within Serato. So essentially, faders can do one of two things. They can fade to the next track, right, or fade up, or they can just literally be 100% the whole way until you get to the other side, then it's zero. So it's either 0 to 100 real fast or a super fade. The fade is great for, you know, smoother mixing and all that stuff. My up faders are set to fade, but then like the cut is best for cross faders, because if you want to cut something up and you want to go you need it to be 0 to 100. So that way you keep it at 0 and then you just basically tap it to go to 100 to let a sound out, if that makes sense. So it's if you've ever heard DJs do things like that. That has to do with the crossfader settings and the fader settings. So you do that right in Serato or on your hardware. Your mic and auxiliary volume are also the same thing. They're most likely going to be on your hardware, but if they're not, you can adjust them right there in Serato. Now over here, we got different FX. I use the onboard FX of my S9, so I don't use any Serato effects, but like if you have any packs like I do here, you can add them and kind of mess around with them in here. Your MIDI devices is what USB, MIDI, mixer, controller, whatever you have hooked up to your laptop, and you can manage them here. So you can see like my little S9's hooked up and it's already ready to go. Got it checked on, allow Serato hardware to remap it. I did that, right? So you definitely want to have that checked. But this entire section will be set automatically if you have your controller hooked up properly and you're ready to go. So don't even worry about this section. And expansion packs. Serato works with expansion packs, so any expansion packs you have for Serato, you can enable in this section. Now we went over basically the settings section. There's just a couple settings right here on your user interface that I want to just go over with you to make sure you are aware of. Number one is autoplay. Now, if you're at a gig and you really have to take a shit or something and you don't have a mix, then you can use autoplay in Serato. Just keep in mind that it's going to play tracks back to back. So there's not going to be any mixing, and if there's gaps in the end or the beginning of the songs, those gaps are going to be played. So it's not going to be the best thing in the world, but it does generally work because most songs don't have crazy gaps in them, you know. So load a few songs onto a crate, then select autoplay down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and then Serato will autoplay the next song up in that crate. Next to autoplay, you have night and day mode, which is super clutch. So if you're DJing outside, it makes Serato super white and bright, and it works great. If it's sunny, if you're, you know, pool party, whatever, it works fantastic, super clutch. Really glad they added this feature. So white is day, and then the other one is night mode. Now in the middle of Serato with your waves, you have a couple different options, and it's based on your own personal preference. I like vertical best, but you also have horizontal, which is gonna do it horizontal. You have an extended one, which the horizontal waves will go across the entire screen, as you can see, which is pretty damn cool. Next, we have a stack where you can stack them on top, which is pretty cool. Then you have the library mode, which isn't gonna have any waves whatsoever. It gives you more room for your library, and not for nothing, it turns the waves off, so if you're trying to practice not having Serato face, it's a good option for sure. You have the option up here to select 2 or 4 decks if you're getting crazy with 2 extra decks. The recording option is right up here, so if you want to record a song, you could do so right in here. Select the location, select what you're recording, the mix or certain channels. Everything's kind of set up right here, so that makes it nice and easy. Your effects for Serato are loaded up right here, so if you're using Serato effects, this is where you load all those up. And then your sampler is going to be right here. This is your sampler button. That's where you can put different samples and stuff like that, like an air horn that I have right here. Pew, 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 pew. That's it, people. That's all the settings for Serato. I hope you found this video incredibly useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.